Now, for 20 months now, since August 2014, the cost of fuel in the country has been gradually dropping to reach the lowest price of the petroleum products in 6 years. However, the corresponding effect in the cost of living has not been equivalent, with the cost of basic commodities and services generally going up. Sam Gituku looks into the conundrum that has left consumers disappointed, especially with the never-lowering transport fares.
Paying more than 100 shillings for a litre of petrol is not surprising to Kenyan motorists who in August 2014 paid 117 shillings for the commodity and 105 shillings for diesel. Today, however, they only need to part with 83 shillings for a litre at the pump, with those in Mombasa paying as low as 77 shillings. The price of diesel is now an average of 65 shillings a litre. But curiously, this remarkable drop in the price of fuel has not been beneficial to most consumers. The price of most basic items has continued to rise. Yet, petroleum is the primary fuel running machines used in the production of these products. The same fuel is used to transport the products by road. Manufacturers, however, argue that different factors of production contribute to the retail price of commodities. Packeted milk now retails at a national average of 53 shillings, up from 48 shillings in August 2014, according to analysis by the National Bureau of Statistics.
Na hata mafuta imeteremka na sukari bado inapanda. Na mchele na unga sasa iko juu sana.
Then we see a question of a market that is not stable, a market that is not open, a market that is about cartels, a market that is full of excesses, and again points to the role of government. What about regulation? Obviously, regulation is weak.
The transport sector, which is directly affected by the cost of fuel, is so far the best example of an unresponsive pricing culture. Passengers plying the Nairobi-Rongai route have to part with 100 shillings during normal hours. The amount has continued to rise over the years.
Hizi gari hata kama mafuta zimepunguka, unapata bei ni ile ile, unashindwa sasa kwani mafuta ikipunguka bado ile area tunaenda bado nikaa kuna kuwa safari na kuwa ndefu.
Sisi mambo ya mafuta kupanda kushuka hatujali ama tuongeze bei wala kwa bei tunaongezanga wakati wa jam ama rush hours.
A narrative replicated in different parts of the country.
Fare kwenda bado vile iko haijateremshwa, bado iko pale pale tu. Haijateremshwa.
Electricity consumers have had a relatively better deal. In August 2014, 50 kilowatt hours retailed at 689 shillings. In March 2016, the price had dropped to 534 shillings. However, this was an 8% rise compared to the cost of the same unit in March last year at 494 shillings. The Consumer Federation says it could be forced to go to court to have agencies mandated to regulate different sectors of the economy punished.
There is some inconsistency here that borders on cheating or deceiving consumers, which obviously we definitely will have to take up and challenge the relevant authorities for failing to do this. And the best, the most effective way is through judicial intervention.
For a free market like Kenya, balancing the business interest and those of the consumers remains a challenge. Despite the decline in the fuel prices, consumers are bound to the mercy of business operators. Sam Gituku, Weekend, Nairobi.
And as earlier mentioned, for 20 months now, since August 2014, the cost of fuel in the country has been gradually dropping to reach the lowest price of the petroleum products in 6 years. However, the corresponding effect in the cost of living has not been equivalent, with the cost of basic commodities and services generally going up. Why is this so? With me in studio, Kwame Owino, CEO, Institute of Economic Affairs. Thank you very much for making time to be with us this evening. There's been a steady decline in fuel prices over the past 2 years, but the cost of living, seems to generally be static or even going up. Why is this?
It's not true to say that the prices of fuel have gone up. Have gone down, and the cost of living has stayed the same. If you track the cost of living over time, it tells you, and the cost of living isn't one thing. It's calculated from a basket of goods and services. So obviously there are some things that have gone down. Started with fuel itself, which was 117 2 years ago. It's 83 today for petroleum. It's 60 shillings. So basically that's been a decline of almost 30 shillings per litre of fuel. That's substantial. I think one of the reasons people don't see that is because we have an obsession with the price of fuel alone, and fuel alone does not necessarily affect all costs of living. So it may affect transport, it may affect the ability of people to fill in and pump their cars, but it does not necessarily affect everything else, because in that cost of living is also the cost of rent, it's a cost of clothing and all that, and not all that is fed into by fuel. And yet commuters will ask, if the cost of fuel is lower, then why are they still paying the same fare? Well, that's a conversation they should have, to be honest, with their, the service providers. That's not really for government to determine, because if you commute from one place to the other and you pay 20 shillings for whatever number of kilometers every day, and if the prices go down and that does not make that adjustment, there must be a reason. And so whoever it is you buy that service from should be able to explain that to you. Okay, so in simple language, explain to us how the low fuel prices translate to better, rather how the impact of the low fuel prices on the economy generally impacts the cost of living in layman's terms. Okay, it depends on where you are. Let's start with the driver. I mean, people who drive in Nairobi already know that 6 months ago, of course, you had to pay more than 100 shillings to fill a litre. Today, you'd pay about 83 shillings within Nairobi. If you're in Mombasa, it's 72. So obviously, that has impacted your cost of living, because you're able to buy more litres of fuel and drive longer for less. Those who produce food, of course, those who buy food that is transported and all that, that also does work. But I think the one place where you mentioned was milk, and why does milk, how comes milk prices? It's about the season. In January, between January and the dry seasons of January right up to May, the amount of milk, because of the rains, the amount of milk that is produced usually goes down. So irrespective of the price of fuel, the price per litre of milk will definitely go up by the fact that the supply is limited. So I think we need to separate what are the things that directly are affected by the price of fuel per litre, and which other things are not necessarily affected by this, plus the seasonal changes. Let's talk about business enterprises. Are they the beneficiaries of the relatively low energy costs as opposed to the consumers who are not feeling the benefits of these low energy costs? Well, it depends on which businesses. You can't talk of all businesses. For instance, many people think that the oil dealing companies, many of them, people seem to think that when their oil prices were about 117, their return on capital was just about 8-9%. So it wasn't out of this world. But if you are a firm that buys services, for instance, transport services, you fly things on airlines and everything else, and prices come down as it does, then over time you'll be able to actually see the costs of sending your cargo perhaps reducing. So I think it's more a mixed bag than just thinking of oil prices alone. And finally, what should be done to ensure that Kenyans generally enjoy the benefits of the low fuel prices? And if indeed this can be felt by the Mwananchi, who should be that person that implements this change, that brings about this change? I think the Mwananchi needs to understand how the economy works. Oil prices may affect supply in one area and they affect demand in the other. So obviously you've seen that the prices of electricity, lighting into the house, and obviously whatever it is you use it for, has gone down. That's a direct result of the fact that the prices of oil have been coming down. On the other hand, food prices may go up by virtue of the fact that, look, we didn't have very good harvest last year. Obviously, before the next harvest comes about, the prices of food will go up. So when those two move in different directions, the cost of living will not come down as much as we would have wanted to. And finally, are we looking at a better year? As we wind up, are we looking at a better year cost-wise? Kenyans feeling that it is expensive to live in this Kenya. What's your projection for 2016? Certainly, if oil prices remain as they are, I think the economy will do much, much better, because oil affects many other things, as we say, all from transportation and everything else. And oil is also the major driver of inflation. So if the prices of oil stay down and we have adequate rainfall and have sufficient food, then obviously we'll have a much better, our cost of living will be more moderate than it would otherwise have been. More moderate, but not necessarily better. Okay, Kwame Owino, CEO, Institute of Economic Affairs, talking to us on just how fuel prices are impacting the cost of living.